Okay, well, welcome and bienvenue to another Neurotech San Francisco Hack Night. Neurotech X is an international community that facilitates the advancement of neurotechnology. Our pillars are community, education, and innovation. We have chapters worldwide, plenty of meetup events, and a thriving online community, about 5,500 now. So check your local community. You might already have a chapter in your city. If not, please get in touch with us. We'd love to help you set one up. Just heard from somebody in São Paulo that would like to set something up. Also check your local college or university. There's lots of student clubs, and yeah, want to talk about the student club competition winners. If you don't already have one, please get in touch. We'll help you put you in touch with someone to help you set one up. Obviously, please join our Slack and our Discord. I should change that slide. And check out learn.neurotechedu.com for the online educational platform. Sign up for the newsletter and check out the job boards at Neurotech X Services. All right. Well, this is our final hack night of the year. So we'll be taking a 2-week break after tomorrow, and maybe a little bit Monday. Yeah, so this will be it until January 7th, I think is the date. And yeah, so right before the end of the year, the student club competition winners were announced, and I believe it was McGill and UBC in the fixed, and UBC was the fixed, and I forget what they call the other competition. They have 2 categories, and sorry, I had to hard reboot my computer. And yeah, so here's the announcement, or at least, yeah, so special kudos to McGill Neurotech for taking first place 4 years in a row. McGill's kicking butt. The open challenge and the fixed challenge. And it's been too long since I can remember what the difference is there. But that's awesome. We've really got to expand this beyond Canada. Or at least I think a lot of the competitors are coming from Canada. Or are the Canadians just always winning? Because I certainly want to try and get UCSD on to describe their Kaggle competition that should be, I think, wrapping up this week. Anyway, I put that on the agenda for the Buzz-In review. And let me see, what was the other news this week? Well, our own Brian Jenkins just won a big Canadian award. It was something very, very Commonwealth. It was like the Queen's Awards. And yeah, what do you say here? Yeah, the Queen Elizabeth II Graduate Scholarship in Science Technology. Good job. So I guess Canadians are still have some link to the monarchy.
She's on the banknotes.
She's on the banknotes.
Yeah.
Is it just the Australians that fully severed ties?
I don't even mean by fully.
Well, I like they no longer consider her also like a figurehead of the state.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I kind of want to say I don't care, but yeah, my like nominated role to know about this, I suppose. That's the
It as the nominal Brit. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, not sure.
Anyway, definitely a really great Paris Hack Night this week. We had Ivan, CEO of mBrainTrain, and I'm forgetting Ivan's last name, but really interesting group that grew out of the. I think he grew out of Oldenburg lab, or at least like one of the reasons that Stefan Debner is on their scientific advisory committee is that they definitely. I mean, he definitely has links into German labs as well as some other labs in Europe, and they started as a mobile. I mean, like very much trying to do the same kind of thing as InnoBio, and honestly at kind of the same time. It was funny that he and I both know the smartphone brain scanner project from at least a good decade ago, and because one of the things about the Smarting amp is that it is runnable from a smartphone, and they also have a PC app. But yeah, I mean, just like a really nice, again, like I hate to compare them to Neuroelectrics because I mean, but that's just like my bias in terms of the first like wireless system that I was familiar with. That was also going to scale to 32 channels, I guess is why it stood out in my head. And they also have, I mean, there's a variant for sleep, but then there's also the smartphones, which is very much like headphones with electrodes built in. So you've got this like strip here as well as some electrodes for the ear. And again, I think being no surprise that like a group that's associated with Stefan Debner was very interested in music EEG, or looking at auditory and music processing, and if remember about like 4 to 6 months ago, Ivan hosted the EEG and music symposium that had Stefan as one of the speakers. That was great. Yeah. So Ivan started, and then Giacomo Valle from ETH Zurich and the startup MyLeg spoke after, describing both their what was the NeuroCup winner this year at BCI Samara in terms of the sensory feedback. The MyLeg adds sensory feedback to a lower limb prosthetic, so that you have the sense of how the foot lays, and how how you're balancing. And so there's a surgical implant in the nerves, just below where the limb is lost, and then a set of sensors in the foot itself, right? And so he talked about some of the particulars of how that sensory feedback is performed, together with the surgery plus the technology, as well as what he presented in terms of the smarting EEG application, which was doing a dual task. So they had people walking on this kind of setup course, if you will, that included things like stairs, and then they had different land conditions where people would walk in sand, which is a particularly hard task for people with a prosthetic. And then they had multiple conditions with without sensory feedback, with sensory feedback, and then included this dual cognitive task, which was essentially an auditory P300. So in this case, it's an active one where they were counting the rare tones, and what they showed was that they were getting a significantly different P300 response, a larger P300 response when you had the sensory feedback. And with the idea being that because you're more comfortable moving and better able to handle the kind of the obstacles and the different terrains and things like that, that you essentially had more cognitive resources for the dual task, and hence the greater P300 response. And he was just, it wasn't so much of a killer app with the EEG as a pretty standard EEG response, but it was nice in conjunction with the awesome award-winning sensory feedback in this prosthetic that if you haven't caught Yakumo before, so we couldn't record this week's Hack Night, but you can find other. He's got a lot of great videos, as does his the research group, Yakumo's postdoc in the neurorobotics or prosthetic robotics group at ETH. So they've got a lot of really cool videos. They obviously have a film team, kind of, yeah. But check that out. And then tomorrow, join us if you can for the Moab developer, the weekly Moab developer, at this point weekly. So it's only been 3 weeks. Moab developer meeting. It'd be 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern, and 6:30 European time. And in addition to, we'll have Devesh and Rashik and Sylvain, but we'll also be joined. I listed the paper of Yin Solowski, who's in Tangerman's lab at Freiburg, but also the Donders, and has the interesting paper, this improving covariance matrices derived from tiny training data sets for the classification of event-related potentials with LDA, which is, as it kind of sounds, is a paper that's using Moab. So anyway, I'm not going to put him on the spot to present necessarily this week, but Jan's going to join us, and obviously he's got a good PR and is proposing to, I mean, is releasing some data that's associated with this. Yeah, and Devesh and others have been making good work and cleaning up, working on some of these PRs and continuing to get things cleaned up. So please join us if you can. John, EEG notebooks, and did you get much feedback on the consortium name?
Well, yeah, this was a proposal that we kind of pitched to the group. I think there was like approval of it, but nothing official yet. But so we decided to do this thing called the Neurotech Challenge series, which is the series part is to be determined as to like the full extent of it, but we do want to do more than one thing. The first thing is this kind of data collection, study, and competition that will be rolling out early in 2021. But what Morgan was referring to is like whether we were thinking of extending the kind of group of people who are involved and creating some kind of entity called the NTECS consortium or something like that. Just in terms of like interested parties who are interested in doing this thing and doing kind of the various iterations that we've been thinking about so far. I mean, so far, like the entities involved are Neurotech X, OpenBCI, and CAMH and University of Toronto. But the more the merrier, as far as we're concerned. So yeah, maybe there'll be a thing called the NTCS consortium in the next few months, if people want to join in.
Did you put a link in the? Is there a link in the Mattermost of your video for the code sprint?
Oh,
is that something that we can make public?
It certainly is, yeah, and that's, I mean, so that can definitely be made public, but also I'll try and put it in a public place. I mean, it should go right in the middle of the front of the website, and
that would be. I mean,
that was always the intention, and actually, I'm glad that you mentioned it because it just didn't occur to me since in the 2 weeks since the workshop to post those put those links in a kind of accessible place. But yes, that's the intention, is for them to be, everyone to be able to get hold of them and see. There was two things. There was a kind of introduction to the project, and there was a relatively brief tutorial. And we definitely will do more of the hands-on tutorial, like several more, because it's quite rushed. I did it in about 5-10 minutes, but the intro thing I think would be of general interest, and hopefully will continue to be more or less accurate for a year plus, or maybe a few years from now.
No, totally.
I'll stick the link in the chat right now. But yeah, it'll go in the main documentation, and I'll probably just put out some shout about it a little bit as well. Put it on some social media channels and the Slack group as well. Yeah,
because that would be awesome, and yeah, selfishly wondering if we could play that. So Noisebridge does this 5 minutes of fame thing every third. I guess it's like every third Thursday of the month, which is this Thursday, which is tonight. And I missed it last month because we do this, and I wasn't quite sure when to duck out and do it, which I have done before, but was kind of wondering if we could play that video, because it's actually a great intro to a project that I think would be that I would love to popularize for Noisebridge, and I really want to make, well, as well as a separate point, but a push with the scikit developers to get emotive support. And but like one, just to help them have an event that gets together just a bunch of emotive users, and they've got old everything except the latest device, and hash out like they've got a working project, but then of course see if we could do a separate event, which is like get that support built into, added as another, I think, super high profile device that would be awesome to have in EEG notebooks too. And yeah, I'd love to push that. Yeah, Dan, yeah, please.
Morgan, what time would you like to speak? You're a few minutes ahead of me coming to invite you to give a little talk. 5 minutes of fame, and if you need more than 5 minutes, hey, we would be glad to hear more. So
so I mean, I've got it would be maybe like after 8. Is that, I don't know what time you guys were shooting for.
It should be between 8 and 9 o'clock. And
cool. I can do that, because
anytime that works for you between 8 and 9.
Great. Yeah, we're just gonna do, we've got somebody coming from Cognition, and so anytime after that, and I've got kind of the same slides, but if we could also push John's video as an intro to EEG notebooks, and then I'll talk more about Moab, which is kind of the other thing that we're pushing. Oh,
hey, I have it.
You do? Did you get?
I got a little sidetracked. Hack Week a couple weeks ago, but now we're gonna whatever you want to do with it. Let us know. We can do awesome. It. And we can let you pick it up, and you can do it yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
we'll talk more later. Okay.
What I can tell you is that my wife has identified about a room full of stuff that she would really like out of our house, and Anyway, we should talk. But that's awesome. And is that, I forget the person you put me in touch with? Is it Kevin?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that Kevin's? Or did you find
Kevin's?
Okay.
And it's for you to use as you see fit until further notice.
Okay. I've got some of I've still got some of Marion's. I think I've got an old Ultra Cortex that I can use, and some electrodes. But awesome. Well, that's great. And Jaden, do we want to talk about this particular Linux issue?
The WX Python?
Yeah, is John? I saw JN, but that's you, isn't it? Is John Nolte this?
I do not think so.
No. Oh,
no.
Shoot. Okay, I'll give him. I'll give him another.
I haven't tried anything since I messaged you about it yesterday, so that's probably what I was going to spend either tomorrow or Saturday on.
Okay. He did actually respond.
Okay.
So you're talking about in terms of the M&E scan stuff?
Yeah, that as well. And the free
or I mean, BrainFlow with free EG32.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I totally confirmed the same thing. So John, I took or the issue that's come up is doing exactly the same installs that we were doing during Code Sprint, and in this case, I matched what Jaden had in terms of 3.6, which again, like 3.6 was working for us. And then, is building. It's building wheels, and WX Python, it fails at, I want to say it's like installing it. Is that right, Jaden?
Something like that. It was. It might have been while I was building its wheels.
It's yeah. I mean, it goes for a really long time, and then give me 1 second, and I can pull up the.
I also on Windows still have to comment out the PyWin hook of the requirements.txt for it to work.
So I certainly feel like we're setting it up to be somewhat brittle by having it as 1.6.0, like
because it installs with something else.
Well, that's weird.
I mean, because I tried a fresh install of it yesterday, and so I ran the setup and it failed because of PyWinhook. I commented out PyWinhook and ran the setup again, and then I had a newer version of PyWinhook.
What Python version?
Let me see.
It's probably like 1.6.1.
I think it's 1.6.3 even.
Or like it's something later, because it's trying to find something it's got built.
So do we want to shift it up to 3.7 in general?
I definitely, I thought we were, I think it's Jaden was just had an old install.
Yeah, but it does strike me as odd that it like can't even run on 3.6. I feel like it should be able to.
Yeah, but it's an issue that we've seen several times, and the solution has been do it as a 3.7.
Okay, I'll update my Linux.
So
I'll install 3.7 in Linux.
I was actually double checking, and let me see.
Let me see what I'm using for.
Well, I had the issue, so I'm also. I mean, I'm trying to test with BrainFlow 3.7.2, or is it 3.7.4? That will. The reason to move to the most recent BrainFlow is that we'll get Windows support for GTech Unicorn, which, I mean, at this point, I know that doesn't actually add a lot of devices, but it would be an awesome device to support on Windows.
And you'll record lots of data for us, Morgan.
I will try.
I've seen it
with the 3 other headsets that I'm trying to click.
On Windows, I'm running 3.8.
Oh, and was this on Windows?
The PyWinhook one? That's that's happening with 3.8.
Yeah,
the WX Python is happening with 3.6.
The if you do 3.7, it will do a different version of PyWinhook, but it doesn't need to be specified. Like it will find a pre-built and install it, and I want to say it's like 1.6.1.
Yeah. I feel really bad that I added in this PyWinhook thing, but it solved an issue that I was having.
Yeah.
But I think it was like an extremely brittle fix, like that or something that wasn't entirely robust to whatever.
What issue did it fix?
I can't even remember now, but it was some kind of Do you remember?
It was failing with PyWinhook because if you didn't have Swig and Visual Studio C++ build tools installed, and it was just like, and I opened an issue on it, and I said in that like you could you can fix this by like doing all this stuff, or just like fixing PyWinhook, or moving to 3.7.
What's Swig?
Well, it definitely wanted Visual Studio. Like I was also working out. I was doing some support for somebody at Concordia who first identified this problem, or first came to my attention from her bug report. And I'm actually, I want to check if I get the same problem with 3.7. I want to see if it's a new problem with WX Python.
Okay.
Which I'm almost there. And how are we doing on time? Okay.
Like, so in a nutshell, the PyWin hook, like, it solved the problem that seemed to be the case for about a month, and then it started becoming a problem. And that's where we're at now. And the solution to the problem that it's become seems to be to move up to Python 3.7, which otherwise seems like a good idea anyway.
The solution to the problem it's become is just to take that part out of the requirements.txt, at least for me.
Yeah, do that as well. Yeah.
But hey, John, did we always have WX Python explicitly in the requirements?
No.
Because I want to say that's still a new thing too.
Did someone add that in?
Yeah, that one is also. I mean, it used to be.
Yeah. I mean,
it used to be everything through matplotlib.
It's not a bad, or at least like in the requirements, it's like a 4.0 or greater. Like it's not so much like a fixed requirement, but I mean, I can tell you that like currently I'm building WX Python and on 3.7, and like if it's a problem with 3.7, then I feel like somehow we've introduced it.
If it fails, try commenting it out and then running the install again.
All right, I'm gonna do an install now because you've scared me.
I mean, yeah, it was.
Should I
bring this up because it's.
Should I just ditch PyWin hook to start with? Like, I don't want it to be there if it doesn't need to be
there. Ditch it and see if it works.
Okay.
I vote for ditching it, and
absolutely, I'll ditch it, and I'm going to do 3.7 on Windows. Okay.
Yeah.
And it'll take all night to install, like it does, so we'll know by the end of the night.
But this is on. We were doing this on Linux. I mean,
no, PyWin hook is a Windows issue.
Oh, sorry. The WX issue.
Yeah. I'm not on my Linux drive right now, unfortunately.
I'm talking to you from the same system, so
yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. I'll let you know. Anyway.
Yeah, it scared me yesterday because I was like, I went to go try the free EG thing with it in Linux, and it wasn't installing properly. And I thought, okay, well, at least let me go in Windows and make sure it's working fine on there. And I went to go install it on Windows, and it didn't work properly. I'm like, oh, this is an issue.
Okay, what am I? So let me just make sure. Sorry, has Andreas joined us? Just want to make sure if he's got the right. Oh, shoot. Okay. He wanted an email. He definitely signed up on the meetup because he had some updates on the links that I included. So now my laptop is very slow. Okay.
So the docs is passing now, Jaden.
From yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah. Updating brain flow and the requirements make it work.
Okay, got it.
Oh, shoot.
I think it's worth emphasizing. I'm not sure if we've kind of been clear about it. We now have docs being built with CI through GitHub Actions. I think that's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
That is
As
cool.
in, I don't have to kind of pull all the updates and manually,
Push them and stuff.
build the docs and then push them back again. And then it takes several days. Critical documentation updates to make their way into the web page.
Was that something that Eric did?
Well, yeah. I mean, I did a version of it, and then Eric said, "No, don't do it that way. Do it this way." And then I think John Nolte said, "No, don't do it that way. Do it this way." And I was like, "Yes, guys, whatever you say." I only spent 3 hours on it, but I believe you that your solution is better.
Yeah, I'm getting the same problem, Jaden, with 3.7 on Ubuntu.
Okay, did you try commenting it out?
The WX Python.
Yeah.
I'll try that. Just a sec. Let me just get this email to our speaker.
I was also wondering because setting up this CI stuff. This was the first time that I'd taken a close look at GitHub Actions and the CI support. So I know Travis and Circle CI things have been around for a long time, but it seems like sometime relatively recently, I just see this everywhere now. I see GitHub Actions and a lot of CI stuff in repos, and am I right in feeling like this is something that's really had a kind of step change in the last year or so, or have I just been really slow and it's actually people have been doing this stuff for years? I mean, like I said, I know that people have been using CI for a long time, but it's just, has CI been on absolutely every repo for every single piece of scientific code, or half decent repo and piece of scientific code? It seems like a new thing to me. It's a first, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so common now when I check out a project that it includes, at the root level, a number of things that relate to basically, CI, whatever they're using, and and as well as testing. I mean, their test infrastructure in general. And I also see that from doing stuff with Nerve Fedora, in that we're building lots of packages, and it's not only are we building, but then it's we're also using their tests and building their documentation, and so it's from that I've seen a real change recently. But there was somebody in Montreal also just said something would anybody like to, go over software engineering with tests as a central feature? And he must have immediately gotten several hundred likes, All right, let me get this done here. Sorry. Is Patrick Patrick somebody.
I do this intro to Git and GitHub lecture. I actually did it at the Brain Hack workshop, and it's kind of the general vibe of it is here's an approach you can take to using Git and GitHub and the kind of tools that are there. Obviously the version control, but also to some extent a kind of backup aspect of version control and the collaborative project for utilities of GitHub, how to kind of approach using those as a scientist as opposed to as a software engineer, because most of the information on the web is kind of geared towards software engineers. And I think you can be a little bit more laissez-faire about your standards as a scientist as opposed to a software engineer. I can elaborate on this if anyone's interested. It's just a little kind of kooky opinion that I have. But in any case, I feel like I might have to update that talk sometime soon to actually talk about these CI features as well, just because it seems like such a central part of GitHub repos now, increasingly.
Well, and let me get this guy's name. It was like Patrick Minalt. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I've seen that guy on the Twitter.
On the Twitter, and
No idea who he is, but I recognize his name from Twitter.
Well,
that's
you know,
funny for you.
The first time that I like was, you know, met him was he posted something on Project Amber and was just like, so who's checking out Project Amber and like let's build this, and I said like join us at Neurotech San Francisco Hack Night. But I get the feeling he's like a comp neuro guy, but maybe he's an industry. Anyway, let me pull up his. But he was the one who was just like, yeah, would anybody like to? I see his pinned tweet is my guide on transitioning away from MATLAB is out. 500 hours to Python proficiency. Damn, he's got a lot of hits on that. Oh, weird. Is he at xcore.net? Isn't that like a nonlinear dynamics package? And I don't know if anybody saw this, but the Neuromatch Academy archive paper is out. Which again, like I one of the first things I see here is a post from him on be a TA at Neuromatch Academy. I think I dropped that in the diversity chat just as like, you know, Neuromatch Academy is really something that changed the landscape in 2020 and in a very good way. He seems to have a lot of MATLAB to Python transition posts.
His genre.
So on this on this post, he got over 1,000 likes on the post about would others be interested in learning how to write research code that won't bite back? Test driven development. It's what the kids are doing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think should try and get a bit better at that.
Okay, so we're just waiting for. Let me just. I don't. Is Andreas joined yet? hope it didn't take too long to send him a message here. Mhm. So hopefully he'll be joining us in any minute now. I will try changing the requirements. Why does it think that's open? Oh. Well, one reason is that it only does it. It's only got this WX Python requirement on Linux.
Yeah.
Is there something? Was this a part of the checking that John Nolte added?
I don't know.
Yeah, he was putting some Linux stuff in, wasn't he? But I thought that was specifically for the CI.
Yeah, that's I Why does it think I'm? Seems to think I'm modifying that file.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Hi. Good. Sorry, I sent you an email very late.
No problem. It's fine.
Great. So yeah, welcome, and super glad you could join us. So if I could introduce Andreas, and yeah, can you give us a little background in terms of how cognition got started?
Maybe by accident. I don't know. This is one of those things where I didn't go into it. It came to me, right? I don't know if you guys are aware of those kinds of stories, right? So life circumstances kind of presented themselves with a problem. And I just sort of, like many entrepreneurs, you sort of said, hey, I've got a burning desire to solve that problem. And I don't quite know what I'm getting into, but I'm going to try and solve it anyway. So that's kind of how we got into it. But personally, I got into it because my mom went into the intensive care unit with pneumonia. And when she went in with pneumonia, they put her on an intubation. So they put her on a ventilator And then she was unable to communicate, but she was sort of locked in her body, but she knew everything that was going on around her, but she couldn't interact with it. So it sort of set me on a journey to figure out how we might be able to tap into our other senses to create nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about it actually really to begin with, other than design and user experience and developing consumer electronics. I used to work at Philips and did some cool stuff there. But yeah, I just sort of stumbled into it. And then I started thinking about what are all the different kinds of IO, that we might be able to create. And so just started playing with lots of different kinds of sensors and thinking about alternative access methods for controlling digital systems. Made a few, tried to do a crowdfunding for one of them, did all right. But then that just sort of set us on a course of learning to say, well, if we can do some really cool things with MEMS chips and accelerometers and gyroscopes, and then touch interfaces, and then thinking about breathing, being able to control things with breath, and then controlling things with infrared and eye tracking and pupil tracking. And then, so gradually we ended up getting closer and closer to the body and started playing with EMG and started to participate in the neuroscience community. We sort of gravitated towards EEG as still kind of the reliable, you have to sort of balance everything out and figuring out sort of what's right for the market and cost, reliability, and all these other things. And so we ended up really playing with EEG early on. Back in 2016, I called Tan Lee at Emotive and said, hey, can we use one of your Emotive headsets? And we had software already that would generate speech based on MEMS, like tokenizing MEMS and gestures and things like this as shortcuts, like macros.
Yeah.
And said, well, if we can do it with all these other sensors, can we just do it with some primitive EEG and be able to set some patterns to trigger some actions and shortcuts? And it showed pretty positive. And then after that, we did an IRB study with Cal Lutheran University down in Thousand Oaks near LA. And they had a PI that did a grant-funded project with our setup. So it was a really like a Rube Goldberg kind of setup with, like I said, the Emotive Insight. So it was the 5-channel headset that we were using. And we were just, using Bluetooth to go to a laptop, to go to our cloud server, to go to Apple servers, to do push notifications into an iOS app. It was a big mess, but it worked. And then we learned a lot from that, and then realized what would be required in order to actually have a viable solution, especially needing.
Yeah. So can you say more about, like your current product? Because that's what I was, like not surprised, but like, I didn't realize that your current product is really this kind of like speech production system, right?
Yeah.
And am I getting ahead of your presentation, or were you gonna?
I didn't know what to prepare for you guys. I thought we were just going to break bread and drink a beer.
Sure. So for those that aren't, like certainly, I think we all saw the announcement as part of Neurotech 2020, but mostly we just see some cool hardware, but as a company, you've been a speech production company. Is that right?
That's mostly where mostly the mission of the company is to help unlock communication for millions of people. That's been our core mission. But what we realized is that once people, communication is like part of the human experience. It's kind of partly what makes us human. But the funny thing is like the cat out of the bag is like, once someone can communicate, then what, right? Then you're going to want to do all kinds of things, right? Self-actualization, you want to control your immediate world around you, and then your extended world. And then there's that world out there that you want to interact with. So it truly is kind of, we just had a chat, like a fireside chat with a well-known neurologist, a guy named Dr. Goldie. And he's been working with locked-in patients and severely disabled individuals for 50 years.
Yeah.
And his expression was, what we've come up with is like, it's a moment for an awakening. I was like, wow, that's a beautiful word. Like for many people, it's kind of like they're going to wake up. And it's not that they've been sleeping. It's just that the world around them has thought that they were not there, but they are. So
Sure. And how long ago was the crowdsource project?
That was 2015. Yeah. So that was, it was a different product. I'm not in my office now, I'm at home, but we created a product called a Smart Stone. If you just, actually, if I'll just, I've never used this tool that you guys
Sure.
use.
No. We always give people a little time to learn Jitsi. So the share buttons, the middle and the bottom left hand corner, it's the middle button.
Hang on, let me,
Sure.
bottom left-hand corner, middle.
So the to the far left is the chat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to check out this link, so this was like the original Indiegogo campaign that kind of set us off on this journey. So if you want to kind of go way back,
Yeah.
that's kind of the roots or the rocks, I guess, where it all started.
Okay, I remember this. Yeah. Okay.
So we
And-
were fully like exploring, like we were way out there and thinking about, could we create a way to truly communicate with each other without words, and being able to have a more intimate connection. So kind of what you're seeing like David Eagleman doing with like his haptic stuff.
Yeah.
We were kind of working on similar, this is what we were doing at the time, and he was doing, I think, a haptic vest or something, but so we were thinking more around how can we bridge the relationships between seniors, generational gaps. So, how do you have millennials and Gen Xers connected with, their grandparents and elderly parents? And so that's where we started, was thinking, can we have like a invisible lifeline, kind of the secret connection between them, where they could beam haptics to each other. You could send light colors to each other, so it could light up and vibrate in a certain way to say, I'm thinking of you, or it's an emergency. And it ended up kind of morphing into this sort of social haptic network thing, which was kind of cool. So we were kind of just out there, right? Just creating something from nothing. But by doing that and launching an Indiegogo campaign, so many people in the market came to us, right? And they were like, but can it do this, or can it do that? Or can can this work with my autistic kid? Or can this work with my brother who just had a stroke? Or can this, so we started getting all this great feedback, and we were thinking, wow, who'd have thought that one little river stone could generate all that interest? But what ended up happening is, in the patterns of conversations with lots and lots of people, we sort of saw a thread through all of that, right? We saw sort of this thread around access, around creating an interface that was more natural, that the computing was closer to the body, and that people wanted to do more with less, right? I want to be able to accomplish more by saying less, or I want to expend less effort to get something done. Which became kind of the manifesto for the company, where we said, actually what we're creating here is a platform which allows us not to make a new IO. Like, I don't think we're breaking any ground on the IO. I think where we're breaking ground is reframing the IO from input-output to intention and outcome, right? And so we're kind of broadening the scope of the definition of IO from intention to outcome. And in that broader scope, can we reduce the latency and the energy expended to detect intention and translate that outcome, right? And so that's really the goal of the company, is how can we do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And so your speech product has been a product for how long now?
We have several products, actually. So, I mean, the Stone was one of them. We wrote an app that the Stone created. And so we created an iOS app that's kind of run it. It's got a life of its own right now. So we've got like 70,000 users that are using this speech generating app on iPads and iPhones. But what's cool is that the version they're using is going to be what's available in our augmented reality, right? So a lot of the core functionality that we've released in kind of you put the functionality in the wild on mobile devices to see what people have to do with it and what they like and don't like. And then we're basically pulling that all into Unity so that now you'll have a spatial experience in AR with a lot of that, with the same underlying stack, so that we don't have to sort of build these disparate systems. It's the same platform. It's just a different UI.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And you said you were at Philips before this as an engineer?
No, my background's design. Yeah, so my background's UX design, customer experience design.
Well, that actually seems like the kind of engineering background you'd want for this particular area. I mean, to some degree.
Well, you'd think that you'd kind of want it for everything, right? So as long as there's a human in the system, if there's a person in the system, then there's got to be an experience to it, right?
Yeah, yeah, but certainly, in kind of like finding those natural ways to, as you said, connect intention and outcome. That if any, that sounds like the kind of the holy grail of UX.
Well, we aren't here to solve small problems, are we?
Right, exactly.
So I'm just going to, for those who maybe haven't seen it, so I'm just going to pop this URL. So this is what we announced on the 30th at Neurotech 2020. So this is the product, and we've been sitting on it for a little while, just in the sense that we weren't sure when would be the right time to start to pull the curtain back on what we're doing. But the timing just worked out. It was either now or like February, So we thought, all right, well, let's go ahead and just start putting it out there and seeing what people think, we're on a bit of a critical path march now towards production of the headset. We've got, about 100 users. We've got a user advisory council, which includes people with disabilities, as well as speech therapists, neurologists, occupational therapists. And we meet with them every month. We've got people that are nearby within 4 hours of Santa Barbara, where we'll drive out and go out into their homes. We'll get all the PPE and the mask and all that stuff going, and then we'll try out the headset with them to get their feedback on it. We do that about every 2 months. And so our aim is to have this solution ready for production in the summer, ready for production, and probably by Q3 we'll be able to have units out in the wild.
Yeah, I know Ryan would like to ask a question, but just wait a second, Ryan. So how much can you tell us in detail about the hardware and kind of like features at this point?
You can ask me questions and I'll answer them, or I won't.
Well, then maybe I will turn it over to Ryan, in that Ryan probably has some specific hardware related questions.
Hey, Ryan, I don't know what
is with the green screen.
Oh, okay. I can't hear you. Hi.
You are muted.
Yeah, your audio is not coming through yet, Ryan.
Sorry, I have 3 mute buttons. But yeah, I'm very excited about this headset. So a little bit of background is that I've helped design quite a lot of AR headsets, including probably the reflector that you guys use. I probably helped develop one of the prototypes for that in the industry, because that's a common style of reflector. And but I haven't seen anyone use EG with a AR headset of this style, and I definitely want to at some point try it, just because looks like you guys have integrated a lot of really cool stuff and are much further along than a lot of AR devices in terms of what you're trying to do, which is what you said earlier, and trying to have like perception and like outcomes, like not just input output, but yeah, I don't really have any questions that I think you could answer because they'd be about like field of view, what type of hand tracking, if you have hand tracking, if you're using eye tracking, which cameras. Like I I'm just excited to see this headset and would love to give you guys feedback at some point if I could try it on. Um, hope someday, hopefully, after all this ends. But yeah, I'm excited to see this develop. And like hoping that you guys will um open it up even more display options because I know that this current display method is one that doesn't have that great of a field of view. Um, but and but it looks like you guys are using a pretty good screen, so that should help a lot with brightness issues and yeah.
I have a question for you guys on that. Would you, so thank you for Ryan for telling me. I'd love to know sort of which AR companies you worked with. But for us, like you guys know, there's been so much money invested by the big tech companies in AR and VR that we're like, I can't even touch that. So our goal wasn't to like create a better AR system. So I'm just going to say that. What I wanted to create was kind of like this function. You have to trade off things, right? Like, what are the things I'm willing to let go of?
Yeah.
Right. And so for us, we're really a software company focused on the BCI. And so our AR is actually more like a Google Cardboard setup. So it's actually got a mobile interface. So it's got a mobile reflecting into the lens. So we're not using eye tracking. We're not using hand track. Our audience can't use their hands. So why would we do hand tracking?
Yeah.
Right. So ours is a 3 DOF system, not a 6 DOF. I would love to have a 6 DOF system. But right now it's 3 DOF on the front end. But for, a holographic for what we're trying to do, that's totally spot on. Right. And we can sort of help bring the cost efficiencies and also the reliability, right? Because a lot of these systems, they're a little squirrely, right? Like they're not always, they don't always work, but meanwhile, we're on like the 500th generation of mobile phone platforms, right? So, so it's like, all right, so we definitely are scoring high on reliability, field serviceability, flexibility, so those are things that we're kind of looking at. So as it comes to the AR, we're mainly about like, well, what's the interactive, what's the platform? So we're doing Unity and as the interface. And so we're going to have the ability to create other applications besides ours. Right now, we're just building a speech generating app, but if people want to build other things, that's cool too. But again, our whole main thing was like, let's create an integrated system that's pretty tightly coupled so that you get like a really good closed loop between the visual stimulation and your BCI, and we want to kind of minimize latency and complexity to get up and running, because it's like I'm sure you guys love to like fiddle around with all kinds of stuff and just deal with integrating things and grabbing new tech and getting it to work. But most folks just want to pick something up and put it on and get going, right? And so that's kind of what we're trying to help get to.
Yeah, I'm excited you guys are using Unity. I like most of they are developers I know. We all use Unity and quite a lot. So that also makes it like I already know a couple AR apps I could probably integrate pretty quickly, but that you guys, like you said, you aren't using hand tracking or 6 degree of freedom. I think that could be somewhat limiting for some people. Like but if you can get the perception methods down for triggering things, then that should be enough. And I know there's newer EEG research of predicting eye movement based on EEG, so you could theoretically not need to use eye tracking either to figure out a person's focus.
You're spoiling my punchline.
Oh, thank you. I'll let you keep going.
No, that's all right. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing, right? Is we're trying to see what we can do without cameras, right? Because you have a number of things. You just have a battery budget that you're dealing with, right? You have weight distribution that you're dealing with. You have EMI interference that you're dealing with. You're having heat dissipation issues. So like all these human factors issues say, if you can do something without eye tracking, you're probably in a good spot, right? Now, I think eye tracking will be really cool for when it gets down to like glasses. I think that's great. But if you have an HMD, BCI is fantastic, right? Like what we're doing. And I think you can still do BCI with glasses, but it would require a massive reduction, system architecture reduction into like a system on a chip or something like that, where your electronics footprint is really, really small for BCI right now. So for us, we feel like we've pushed the limit on reduction on the PCBAs and the electronics about as far as we can get without raising a significant amount of investment. And we could actually take a huge leap forward with a bigger investment. So what we said, well, that's kind of on the roadmap. So what we're doing right now is serving a big need. The form factor is good. There's things we can do to kind of make it better. But for this market, it's revolutionary. So for what we're talking about, and I haven't even shown you slides yet, but I like the questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Well, so if I wanted to develop new applications using this platform, what kind of interface or API or framework are you making available for developers?
If you can code in Arduino and Unity, you can work with this.
Okay. That's pretty specific. and like how custom is this? What would I find potentially on that Arduino, connected to that Arduino that I wouldn't get on, say, an Uno? I mean, is there any other hardware functionality that's
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a ton. So we're going to have our own services and stuff that we're going to be. We'll be providing an API with full access down to almost the bare metal. So you'll be able to. We're still sort of working through the scope of what that looks like as an interface. And
okay. So that's one of the. It's still in process, but yeah, like we'll have access to the microcontroller and a bunch of other hardware on the.
Yeah, so I mean, I can tell you, like right now, I can show you sort of a peek at some stuff, but hang on.
Sure.
I've got like 1,000 slides that I've got here.
We'll take any and all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly. I mean, I'd love to hear more about how your current product works, because it sounds like, to some degree, like understanding that would tell me a lot about, how you're trying to open up that product with kind of more hardware. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good image here. So, well, just kind of abstractly. So, some of, let's see. I don't know how this is going to work. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's an example. This is a slick mock-up of an actual interface that we have for our test suite. This stuff over on the right is actually just fake. But this part right here and across the bottom is all functional right now. So we created a companion application on iOS that can use Bluetooth to Bluetooth directly in and control all the settings on the hardware. Right now, you can control all the sessions as far as starting and stopping or pausing acquisition. You can resume. You can adjust sample rates regarding the analog acquisition sample rates, as well as the BCI is communicating over Bluetooth BLE5 to the phone. And so we can adjust sample rates. So we can handle sample rates ranging from 250 all the way up to 8,000 samples per second per channel. So we can, at full blast, we can do 64,000 samples a second over serial. If we have a USB-C out, so if you wanted to dump the data out to another system, you could do extremely high bandwidth raw data transfer. If you want to do it over Bluetooth, we'll be publishing some papers on this probably in the new year, but we've been able to increase lossless transfer at around 1K samples per second over BLE5, almost at 2K, and that's per channel. So at 8 channels, we're able to do roughly 16,000 samples per second over BLE5. Wow. And so in this system, you can turn on and off certain channels. You have data visualization. We have consoles for adjusting things. Because we're using the AR environment as for buttons and visually evoked potentials and things like that, we have a little 2D sort of canvas, like a WYSIWYG thing, where you can place objects on the 2D canvas, and they'll show up in AR, and you can append different frequencies to them. All within this developer suite. And last point is really, really killer. I don't want to talk too much about it right now, but we can do metadata appends to the streaming data as it's coming through and being digitally processed. So if you think about just raw data coming through, it's kind of vanilla. But if we can append metadata in real time, it becomes like French vanilla. So that's kind of my sort of joke. But let's see if I can. Yeah. So anyway, so let me get back over to you. How do I stop sharing?
Just hit it again.
Is that off? Okay. Yeah. So so there's a lot of. One of the things we were frustrated by the other consumer, EEG devices that are out there, like we would have just used someone else's if we could have. But, the software stack was really inaccessible. There wasn't a lot of developer support with a lot of these consumer devices, even the clinical ones, right? I mean, you have devices that are in the, $200 to $500, $600 range. And you really don't get much support, and you can't access everything you need. And then on the other end, you're spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a system, and you still don't get good support. So we kind of just went ahead and rolled our own and said, let's build it the way we want it. And obviously, if we make it easier for us to develop, we're sure that other developers would probably enjoy that too. So
yeah. Well, so is there any chance that, it sounds like to some degree, you're, like any chance you'll be opening up this hardware once it is released, or like where do you see the important things for you to kind of keep close to chest, and where do you think developers can really be adding and contributing? Yeah.
So research is kind of our first market, I guess, if you will. So next year we'll be releasing. I'm not going to say who, because we'll have like a press release coming out probably in January. But there's a popular manufacturer who makes a lot of systems for physiological labs and research labs at universities, as well as corporate research labs. And so they're going to be the first to kind of bring this to market through universities and corporate labs. And our system already integrates with it. So our API basically passes all the data out over Bluetooth and over serial for their desktop workstation analysis software. So it'll definitely be available through like organizations that are going to basically get it for the labs. So if anybody's interested in it, and you like a postdoc or somebody's working on something and want to put a grant in to have it funded for the lab or for a project, totally cool. I talked to Yannick and Adam about NeurotechX about possibly setting a few aside for NeurotechX, so that depending on who's the most eager chapter, we might be able to drop one or two in the respective chapters for you guys to play with. So we're trying to figure out what would be the best way of assessing how interested different chapters are.
Yeah.
So we're definitely open to that for sure. And we'd be putting the requisite supports in place to give access to
And along with that, I mean, we would get, or like it would be publicly available in terms of like what what chipset you're using for the EEG, ADCs, or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we would be making information available about the stack, about what you'd be programming with, and what the constraints are. And if you needed to pull a data sheet on a particular component, you'd be able to know where to go to get that for sure.
Because I mean, like certainly at those speeds, like you're gonna want low level access. I mean, it's obviously going to give you really tight control, potentially really great closed loop latencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're doing is, I mean, we're still a small company, right? So, but we've designed the hardware so that it can also accommodate. So what I didn't say is on the sides, there's also the BCI itself includes speakers. So there's a stereo left and right speaker, and there's also a haptic left and right stereo. So you have haptics and audio in addition to the visual display. And then the phone, of course, has haptics and audio with it. So essentially the whole headset provides full like 360 spatial audio and haptic opportunities. We designed it to include those things for biofeedback as a result of how I'm interacting with the AR content. So if I'm clicking or interacting with things, I might hear sounds or haptics on the left or the right or the rear or the front, to provide that biofeedback as I'm interacting with objects. But you could also use those things to, I don't know, represent what's going on in your brain, right? So do you want to have sounds kind of reflecting, brainwave activity? Do you want to actually use it for encoding and entrainment of the brain, right? So instead of doing it as biofeedback on the tail end of that interaction, do you want to actually stimulate the brain through auditory and haptic and visual stimulation and have the UI do something that changes as a result of that? So it's kind of a bi-directional closed loop if you think about it.
And again, well, sorry, let me turn it over to other people asking questions. I'm dominating. Anybody would like to ask more questions?
Yeah, I'll jump in as someone who hasn't seen this architecture of AR devices. Do you put in a phone into the front and then an app operates on that phone?
Yeah.
Okay, and so then, so the device itself is basically a BLE device that has a speaker and it has the BCI and the sort, and it just communicates to the phone in the front through BLE.
Pretty much.
All right, and so does the device itself have any like onboard storage for logging or anything?
Does. Yeah, it has a SIM on it, or it has a SIM for 4G through the phone, but then the BCI itself has a SD card.
That is fire. And then, so is it, since it's running audio, it's probably like a 32-bit ARM processor. Like it's kind of beefy.
It's pretty beefy, yeah.
Can you like deploy your own kind of like signal detection algorithms through there? Is there like any way to like, does it already have a bootloader and just like modify the firmware a bit and then like just pop it on there?
Yep. Try not to break it.
Yeah, right. But that sounds very fun. Okay. No, awesome. Those were all of my questions.
Yeah. Since you said it can run off of a phone, I'm guessing that means will it be able to run off Android or iOS versions of, I'm guessing, a built Unity app or something?
Right now, it's designed primarily for the iPhone SE or the iPhone 6, 7, 8, and the SE, the latest SE, as the form factor. And it's running iOS and Swift and Unity. So that's what it's doing now. I mean, we could accommodate Android for sure, but right now we had to sort of pick one for what we're doing.
Yeah. Just because I know if it's Android, I could then run the app on my computer and actually use a higher end augmented reality headset as the display, like the Project North Star, which would then give me 6 degree of freedom, larger field of view, and stuff like that, because I know how to modify. I'm guessing it displays in a specific method. I know how to remap those to other AR display shapes. So I think that would be very interesting, because it seems like the phone and AR is like kind of something that can be changed up if necessary, while the core functionality is all the software integration you guys are doing with the BCI, which is very exciting.
Sort of. I think that there's still a mechanical coupling between what we have as far as the AR and then the BCI itself, because there's some shared resources between the two. So there's actually, I can actually show you kind of more of an anatomical view of the system. But you know, as an example, we're running shared power. So we have a single USB-C running, and it's powering the BCI and the phone off the same power line through to a lightning cable. So we do have to run, and then there's also well, there's just if you're thinking about how you deal with distributed computing around a headset, so we needed to have it basically built in. So you couldn't basically put this on a HoloLens or a Magic Leap, right? This is its own thing.
Or no, I'm talking where I I know that, but it's the phone, is the phone doing the processing for the BCI?
Oh no, yeah, good question. No, no. So there's we just got a patent that's granting for the method of how we're dealing with the signal processing, and so there's 3 modes of digital signal processing. We call it cooked, simmer, and raw. So you know, raw is essentially just what it is. But we're not actually sending any raw data out except through serial. So it's all processed data that's being used. So cooked data is all happening on the BCI itself. So there's no dependency on the phone at all. If we wanted to do simmer, which we're dealing with offloading some additional processing, then we could push that to the phone if we want to. But for our use case, so it's really like, do we want it local, or do we want a nearby local host for higher bandwidth, or do we need to push it out for extremely high bandwidth out through serial? So there's sort of 3 modes that we can support.
Yeah, just because, so what I'm talking about is, instead of having a phone, you have a device that emulates a phone that your device thinks
for sure. Yeah,
is
anything
the display, and then
exactly.
pass it to a different AR display.
Maybe I didn't understand your question. So so if you didn't have the phone turned on, or you didn't have one, and you had, say, an iPad or a laptop or something across the room that had Bluetooth, and you were connecting the BCI to the Bluetooth, you could absolutely do that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because that makes this really, really, because this would lower the cost so much. I mean, I'm guessing that's part of the reason you guys didn't try doing your own full AR optic stack, which, let's just say, is not fun.
No. Well, I mean, like, how much money did Magic Leap raise? And, and I mean, there's, I don't know how many billions of dollars has gone into it, and it's still not there, right?
So because of that, I can very quickly see quite a few people I know wanting to pick one of these up and start integrating it with different stuff. Especially because if it can hand off some of the processing to a computer that's connected over USB-C, that would be great. And I know when I've done AR with a friend who has cerebral palsy and is restricted to a wheelchair, you can literally strap a giant computer to the wheelchair, and that would allow for all the processing you need in a case like this. But yeah, that is, I definitely hope SF ends up as one of the chapters. I mean, this is SF Hack Night, but we now have so many people from all over the place who probably would want to use a device like this as well. And I don't want to bias you guys towards sending one to the
please.
That's very good.
It's like, put in your votes, fellas. Ladies and gentlemen, put in your votes. I think, I mean, we want to have fun with this, right? You know what I mean? We're solving some really depressing, hard problems, and being able to say, we didn't approach this as we didn't want to create it as some kind of stigmatizing medical device. We wanted to make something that was cool that everybody'd want to get their hands on and play with, right? So if you thought about, gosh, why wouldn't Facebook, Oculus have something like this behind the next Quest or something, or what I mean? So it's why couldn't this just be a general purpose thing that everybody can play with? And so that's kind of our view, is this ought to be something that everyone can enjoy. But you shouldn't exclude people that have physical problems, right? And so how can we make this inclusive? And so that's kind of been our ethos, right? Is how does everybody get to have fun? Because we're all kind of temporarily able-bodied. That's our philosophy. And you kind of never know when something's going to happen. So it'd be awfully cool to have something like this, knowing that it's out there. But I wanted to show a few just anatomical pictures here, so you get a sense of what's going on. So this is the profile. So you can see, we've got the little speakers here. This entire cover, the whole cover comes off and kind of exposes some of the underlying guts of it. But you can see how it works. The lens is magnetic, so you can pull the lens off fairly easily, and then the top white part can also slide off, and it's magnetically connected. it's going to come with accessory straps. So there's going to be one top strap. There's also going to be a chin strap. So a lot of folks that say have spastic CP or you're moving around really appreciate having that extra support under the chin, which also does two things. It makes sure that it's stable and the electrodes aren't sort of jostling around on your head. You know, but you think about somebody who might want to do research of like, what if I'm riding my bike, right? Or I'm riding a scooter or a skateboard with this on? Could I actually be fully mobile and moving around with this? So we kind of have been looking at individuals with what's called, you know, hyperkinetic CP peripheral systems that make it difficult to stop moving. So we're trying to design it so it's useful for even people that are fidgeting around. On the back, it's got a dual direction cabling system for being able to tighten it, kind of like you'd find in a HoloLens. But you don't see any splits or anything because the adjustment's actually happening up here on the front of the headset. So as you twist the knob in the back, the front piece moves out or forward and backwards. So this is what it looks like from the back. So the cover pops off and each of the specific electrodes are adjustable axially up to 6 millimeters. So they're detented so you can adjust the comfort and position of each of them. Right now we're doing the occipital and the parietal. So O1, O2, OZ, PO3, PO4, and POZ are our fixed positions, but we're also including 2 auxiliary ports. So if you wanted to run leads out to other places on the body, if you wanted to run them out to other, right now the models are just EEG that are running on the system, but we're trying to look at how we could accommodate having multiple models. So if you wanted EMG or EOG, electrooculography, in addition to EEG, being processed at the same time, so it's multimodal. That's really where we're going. Gives you kind of a better idea. The power switch is over here on the right. Just some beauty shots. So we're using dry passive electrodes. We're with silver chloride tips right now. We have some concepts around alternative electrodes, but we're probably not going to be shipping them with the first version. Here you can see it with the front lens removed. This is what it looks like fully disassembled. So essentially the lens comes off, the top cover comes off, and then you slide the phone into the front cavity there from the top.
I see.
The electrodes on the left and right, that's referencing ground, so there's no ear clips. So essentially we can essentially handle just impedance and quality control all within the headband itself. That's about what it looks like.
That's super cool. In my lab, we work a lot with the blind, and one of my friends is a PhD student who is blind, and he's always going off about how important it is to have like subtle assistive technology that is not like, oh hey, look at me, I don't want a bunch of lights on my head. And so I definitely like the aesthetic, and I wanted to ask about the 4G functionality. So like the ability to connect to the internet, was there a specific use case in mind for that? It seems like since the phone is there, the internet connection could come through that, but is there a situation where you'd be using the device without the phone, or a need where you wouldn't want the phone?
Well, the 4G is there because it's you know, we don't want people to feel like they have to stay at home or on their Wi-Fi to be able to like do what they want to do. So we believe that folks need to be mobile. So it was primarily in just supporting that, and the phone that was just a bonus by having the mobile form factor, right? Is being able to have a SIM. So that's super helpful. If you didn't have the phone, it would be tough to do mobile unless you were paired to another mobile device somehow. that was the main thing. I mean, there's all kinds of web services. So for us, like I said, we were starting with communication as the interface to generate speech. But we're going to soon be releasing a version of our 2D app. our 2D app that we have in the Apple App Store will soon have an Alexa integration inside the software. So the predictive keyboard will basically allow you to speak things out loud, or you can send it directly to Alexa. So all of that capability is going to come with this. So imagine being able to have access to Alexa from anywhere, whether you're in a park or on a boat or at the beach or wherever, from within the heads-up display without any dependency on an Echo.
Yeah, so it seems as though the device itself is like pretty standalone, whereas the device versus the software running on the app are pretty separate in that it would seem like, oh, the cell phone has a 4G modem, so, you know, why doesn't the device just do all of its internet processes through the phone since it's there already? But yeah, I could see how that would make the writing of the software more complicated for those like cooler use cases.
Not that it's cooler, but as a startup, you don't want to be sort of wedded to one platform unless that platform gives you a bunch of money.
And you have control over it, yeah.
We're kind of holding out. So if Apple decides not to play nicely with us, then we could switch to Android without a lot of fuss.
This is nice. Yeah, I like it. Wow.
Can I ask a dumbish question? Not that I'm necessarily a dumb individual, but
you have an epic mustache, though.
What do you do? Like, I put the thing on my head, and what happened?
You see a graphic UI in front of you on the lens as a heads-up display, and you can interact with the content that's being presented on the visor. And so there's multiple ways to interact with it. There's head gaze as an example, so I can interact with things. If I have mobility, I can interact with it. But if you can't, then you can turn on the BCI, and essentially what it does in software is it translates the UI elements into, it appends the UI elements with frequencies that we can pick out in the BCI.
Right. So you'll have like, I think maybe 4 or 5 essentially buttons flying in the air that can be selected by the eyes.
We can go anywhere from 2 buttons to 60 buttons.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think you're using SSVEPs, right?
SSVEPs within the spectrum we're talking about is fairly limited to about 6 or 7 items, which I think is what you're saying. But we're moving into code modulated frequencies, which is going to get us to a much more nuanced set of frequencies that we can work with.
And this is all with just the like 6 occipital electrodes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Can you give me just a sense of like the speed of interaction? I'm trying to think of I was wondering if there was some, analogy you could make to some digital or non-digital, activity that would be picking out items or doing some kind of interaction at the same kind of speed and bandwidth or dimensionality.
Yeah, there's interesting sort of, we were inspired early on by, it's kind of rudimentary stuff, but they're called spellers, like BCI spellers. So those are pretty reliable, but they're also sort of stuck in the world of having to have, lots of wired systems and desktops and, like all these variables are not this, right? So we've had to sort of piece by piece bring a lot of that componentry onto the head, as opposed to having all the wired connections outside of the body. So we basically brought, essentially the speller is the focused kind of metaphor of what we're doing. The challenge with a lot of the spellers has been using P300, which takes a long time. And so by focusing on SSVEPs or CVEPs, we can radically reduce the latency. So as an example, I'll show you, and here's a video from, I don't know, can you see this? Can you see my screen?
I still see just the hello headshot.
All right, let me, oh, I see, got it.
Yeah.
Cool, can you see that?
Yes.
So this was done a couple of years ago in our lab in Toronto. So this is, you see we've got 3 channels here on the visual cortex. This is just reference. And this prosthetic hand. So this is a demonstration with 4 different VEPs that are being projected via a phone into the same lens that you're looking at. What we're able to do, sort of how quickly.
So I'm wearing an AR headset, and on the headset are some little circles that are flashing. The EEG is being recorded through some electrodes on my scalp, and through that, we're sending it through some machine learning algorithms that are then determining which part I'm looking at and changes the position of the hand. So right now, I'm looking at number 4 position, which does this with the hand. Now, if I move to number 3, it does it almost instantly and changes to 3. Now, I'm moving over to 2, and finally, 1. And that's all there is to it. It's pretty fast, pretty easy, and yeah.
So that was a couple of years ago, and we were at about 1 second. And so what we're doing now is we're starting to optimize that to where we can get the intent to outcome sub 1 second. So we're trying, our goal is to get to about a half a second. But for this population, actually, the irony is there's a cognitive perception around time and the responsiveness related to like how much time it might take to say initiate moving my arm versus if I could never move my arm and now I can move this thing. Sort of, you've got this paradox, right, of a time envelope, which is kind of irrelevant for this population. So the ability to actually get to, 50 milliseconds as an example, which would be insane, is kind of unnecessary, I guess, for the population we're talking about, because we're not dealing with fighter pilots or soldiers. We're dealing with, or high performance athletes, right? So we're dealing with folks who are maybe wanting to drive their wheelchair forward or turn left or turn right or go backwards, or they want to turn the music up or down on the stereo, or they want to change the TV channel, or they want to talk to someone. So it's a latency isn't as big of a deal there.
One question I have is, what about like people who want to use something like this to game? Like, as I also do a lot of game development, and adaptive gaming is really important to me, and figuring out how to make more games have adaptive control schemes so that people who are wheelchair bound or have very, very limited mobility can play games that do sometimes rely on very quick things. Like, do you think you guys might try to at some point get down to like under 100 milliseconds, like allow pretty much these people to play games that for most of their lives they've just been able to watch other people play?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want to be able to support accessible gaming for sure. Question for you is, and I haven't talked to Bryce or the Microsoft folks, but the buttons that they were working on in like Logitech, like the Switch controllers.
Oh, yes.
Do you know what the speed is for those switches?
Yeah. So if you're talking about the Xbox adaptive controller, which like at GDC I got to try out and talk with the team behind it. Those are, it's as fast as using a keyboard. Like those are sub-millisecond keys, and they also have
I mean,
serial.
the latency from once the item that we have selected is selected, I mean, it's super fast. I mean, it's like real.
Yeah,
It's real
yeah,
time.
that's perfect. Like,
But it's just
because
software to confirm that that's the one that you're intending to select, right?
I mean, also if it can be combined, because one problem with the adaptive controller is it has to be customized for every single person if they need custom stuff. And because of how many inputs a lot of games require, like I have a PS5 controller, this thing has a ton of inputs, and some games require all of them. And the Xbox adaptive controller doesn't allow that many inputs for, or it allows a lot of inputs, but not all users have that much mobility to use physical inputs. So I know a couple who use a combination of eye tracking and adaptive controllers and audio triggers, but something like this could really help a lot, especially if there's a way to like try and think how in Unity I'd like try to make this go on top of a game, kind of make it overlay onto games, because the problem is getting this type of stuff integrated with more apps and games is very hard to do on the getting the original developers to support this stuff is a really annoying task. So if an overlay works,
Well, yeah, and we'd love to like pick your brain on some of that. Because this is the hard part about trying to do one of these solutions is that we can't just do the BCI, right? Yeah. Like, darn, now we have to like figure this other thing out too, right? Like, which is, so we have two ends of the spectrum. We have one person over here who can't stop moving, right? And on the other side, we have someone who can't start moving. And so it's a wide spectrum. And then on the other axis, we have people who have low cognitive, like developmental disabilities versus high cognitive ability, so, and then you have this very complex set of edge cases that we have to factor. And so what that's forced us to do regarding the AR is it's forced us to have to create all kinds of these knobs and sliders, right, within the AR application, within settings. So creating accommodations for somebody who's moving around and you're like, I'm moving around so much, I can't fixate or dwell on a particular item because I keep zipping past it. So now we're having to create different kinds of algorithms in Unity to offset all that movement, or create additional features such as sticky keys or magnetic keys, which give me some gravity on objects and things like this so I can interact with them. So as if I can hold something still while I'm trying to, it's like trying to hit a hammer, like imagine you're holding a hammer and you're swinging it around and you have a hammer in the other hand and you're trying to hit the nail on the head. I mean, we have to create essentially features within Unity, within what we're doing, to offset all these different dynamic situations. And so, I mean, we're doing it for ourselves, but it seems like, we're in conversations with the XR Access group, the foundation. We're also in conversations with Unity. So there might even be an opportunity where some of these things that we're designing as, accommodations for AR, maybe they'll end up in, standard capabilities for everybody to get hands on,
Yeah, like if do you guys know when you'd be releasing a Unity package?
We'd be doing the first version with the headset, which would be in the late summer.
Yeah, Because I know a lot. Being in SF, I know a lot of people at Unity, and one of the best Unity programmers I know actually developed entire software stack for Meta, the Meta AR glasses. So and right now he's actually wheelchair bound because of some knee problems, and does all of his VR development and stuff in a wheelchair. And like, I definitely want to let him know about this. I'm going to send him this meeting because I definitely think he'd be very interested in this stuff as well. And
Yeah, we're a small team, and if somebody has an idea of how to make it better, like we're totally game for that, for sure. Like we don't want to reinvent everything.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. Just make it much better.
Well, great, guys. So I ate up a bunch of your time. Oh, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the headset for communication. So I've been following your iOS app Speak Pros, and I know that it uses gesture to help build sentences faster. But what does this headset, does it bring any added advantage to Speak Pros users?
You know, what we're doing with Speak Pros on the iPad or iPhone, it's the same underlying capabilities, but the UI is, the interface is different, right? Because what you're going to want to use on a two-dimensional interface is going to be different than in a spatial interface. So for the iPad, for instance, we enable like gesture swipes, like different kinds of squiggles, and you can configure those as shortcuts for entire phrases or sentences. So you can sort of think about it as two-dimensional sign language. So that's one interface that we created there. We have the predictive keyboard. So for direct select, either typing or switch access on the iPad, people can use that, like single switch scanning to navigate XY coordinates. We also support on the iPhone 10 or the iPad Pro with the true depth camera. We're supporting facial recognition and eye tracking, so using the latest ARKit. We've written our own software on top of ARKit. Like I was saying, like different settings and things for different disabilities, but like the iPad allows for eye tracking and facial recognition on it. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do on an iPad for people with disabilities. But when we're looking at the headset, the hardware brings different kinds of capabilities. So the headset brings a different kind of experience, right? So some of those things port over and some don't, right? So, yeah.
Do you think the headset will help the users to speak faster?
For some people, it'll allow them to speak for the first time. And for many people, they can speak much faster. Yeah, so we have some examples of folks that we've been going out in the field with, and we have this one woman, she's in San Luis Obispo, so just south of you guys. And she has CP, she's like 50 years old. She can do some minimal sounds. She can make sounds, but they're unintelligible, but she's so super coherent. She's kind of her body, like her caregiver has to stretch out her arm to like soften up her muscles so that she can use a little switch to control an iPad. And so she's been a switch user of iPad for like 4 years. And we sat there with her for 35 minutes and she didn't say one thing. She couldn't coordinate the timing of the switch to be able to get it to stop on the button that she wanted it to stop on. And then we put the headset on and she typed out, she said, "Hi, my name is Terry," in 2 minutes.
Oh, that's really cool. Using BCI?
That was a combination of our accelerometer, the headset movement with the BCI. Yeah. So this is one where we realized that anyone working on BCI only, there's a limitation of what you can do with only BCI. You have to find a way to combine BCI with other sensors. So in our case, we're leveraging motion detection and proximity. with BCI, and we're coupling that information. So some people rely only on BCI, some people rely only on movement, and some people rely on the combination of the two.
Yeah, I see that you have a lot of great interface problems to solve, and they're really interesting.
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to solve so many. Or more people were helping us solve them, because it is a lot of stuff to have to figure out. Well, thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, if you there's a form if you're interested on that one.cognition.com page at the bottom. If there's interest, just feel free to sign up. It does add you to our email list. We don't send emails a lot. We'll send them out maybe once every couple of months. But if you want to get on our email list, feel free to do that. Share it out with folks if you're interested. Would love to, if folks think that they might be able to help out with what we're doing. We're totally open to that, whether it's folks at Unity or any of yourselves that are interested in working with us on this. We're trying to change the world, but we can't do it by ourselves. So.
Well, it's great to meet you for me for the first time, and really glad that you came to talk to us. I get the feeling that we'll be trying to put together at least a small pitch for what we could possibly add.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I already have ideas that I'm going to start writing up, and I'm definitely going to fill out that email form, because this type of tech is something I think is going to be so important for the future for so many people, and can make such a big difference in so many areas. Thank you so much for coming and talking with all of us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, and if you have ideas, or sign up for the forum if you want to be on email stuff. But if you have ideas regarding what you're talking about here, just email me directly. You have my email address, so feel free to either group your thoughts together into a single email, or feel free to however you want. But you can reach out to me directly, and then I can just interface directly with our engineering team.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time this evening.
Thanks a lot, Andres.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Take care.
Yeah.
All right. Let me just quickly check. Hey, Brian, are you keeping an eye on 5 Minutes of Fame and at Hackney, at the Noise Bridge?
I haven't been watching it, but I know if Dan is still part of this, but yeah, that just started a couple minutes ago.
Okay.
But
well, let me
yeah.
have a quick look at.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it is running
So I see, John, the crowdcast, it says an hour and 30 minutes. Is that including like a lot more than just the?
I think the talk itself is somewhere between 45 and 60 minutes.
It is.
Maybe it's under that. I mean, you can easily check. Okay, I could check for you now if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I could jump. Yeah,
it's not 5 minutes for sure. Were you actually going to stream it right now, or like?
Well, I was going to. I was going to see, how they're doing it at Hack Night, and like
not
it.
The
yeah.
calculations for the Bluetooth lags have tended to hit a ballpark of 20 to 30 milliseconds. So that actually holds.
Sorry. Whoops. Sorry. Yeah, it might be.
Yeah. Also, with regards to Noise Bridge, we can move over to the Noise Bridge Jitsi server at pretty much any time. I've talked with X. I'm wondering how hard it will be on 5 minutes of Fame Thursdays if we're both on the same server. I'm pretty sure we'll be fine, but yeah. So if we want to move off of the standard Jitsi, it might be a bit more stable over there.
Sure. Well, let me. Yeah. That might be a little longer than I was thinking. You know, only
You can put it on. Maybe you speed it up. Do it 1.5 speed.
That's right. Also, what all the kids are doing. Yeah, watching things at 2x.
Right.
So let me just also say, if anybody's here for your first time, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please. Not a requirement, but yeah. So this will be the last hack night for the year, and there was definitely a lot of great talks and things to catch this week, as well as catch up on all the machine learning that was a part of Neural PS, and as I just saw that Numenta actually has a YouTube which tries to do an overview, at least from Numenta's perspective, of what was good, being you know, as involved as they are in certain aspects of comp neuro. Yeah.
So on Numenta, right?
Yeah.
And relating to another thing that you had, so Numenta is Jeff Hawkins' company, right?
That's correct.
So, because you had another item on the program, which was this brain-inspired podcast. And I just discovered this, and it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
The content, like the people he's talking to, and the guy, I don't know who he is, but he's like very on the ball.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's obviously somebody super involved. Good night, Santosh. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't familiar with him, but I think it was O'Reilly. I forget his first name.
Randy O'Reilly, yeah. I listened to that one. And now I'm just getting through like the back catalog, but he did one with Jeff Hawkins as well. But
okay.
So Jeff Hawkins, like, always interesting to hear him talk. Yeah. But this interview, he's literally saying stuff like, we've discovered fundamental things about how the brain works, and we think we'll have it all figured out in 10 years. he was
okay.
It was
good.
I mean, and I think I definitely am like open to the idea that he's making kind of breakthroughs because he's got like a reasonable track record, but he's definitely marketing it. Oh my God. He's like, no, we really understand this stuff. He's just putting these numbers out, like 5 years, 10 years. Yeah, I think we really have this nailed down. 5-10 years. Whoa.
Yeah, I think
he's just so confident, and he's just out there like boom, boom, boom. Yeah, fine. Yeah, done deal.
I'm very willing to say that we've got a century before we know what problems we need to tackle.
Not according to Jeff Hawkins. Oh, he knows what's going on, and
Well,
they're getting there.
I mean, and God bless the people who know how to market as well, right?
Love it, all of it, but also just find it. When you listen, everyone who hasn't heard it should listen to that episode because it's just cool to kind of get. It talks a little bit about what they've been doing recently, but also a little bit about the kind of history of like.
Did you say that it was in the meetup agenda? Where's the?
Yeah, well, it's a podcast called Brain Inspired, so just search for that, and there's loads of really good ones. The one that Morgan just mentioned is this guy Randy O'Reilly, who's a kind of not super early but relatively early PDP connectionist, artificial neural network cognitive science guy, who's now riding the wave of the fact that the stuff he was working on that was a bit niche in the 90s is now kind of very on vogue. But yeah, so actually, Randy O'Reilly's book, honestly, like that got me into cognitive neuroscience. Yeah, absolutely. It was like lying on my dad's shelf when I was like, that's interesting.
That's awesome.
But it's really cool, yeah. But Libra now is like got Python API, which is good to hear.
Yeah. So it was Libra that made me want to listen to it, and it was the first time I'd heard of this podcast. And it was, and then Jaden was talking about Nengo, right? And Nengo this, Nengo that, and it was coming up in lots of the neurorobotic stuff, and then of course he's like 3 weeks later it's Chris Elias Smith, and now with Russ, like he mentions the fact that he's getting questions from two other people, like one of which is like I think is David Popple, and then like also linking back to like, oh yeah, and I interviewed them like episode 24, like oh man, I definitely got to see some of the previous people here.
Yep.
No, very cool. I support him, or like I started supporting him on Patreon because I was like, this is a good podcast, and he's gearing up for. I mean, because he's close to his 100th. I'm not sure whose guest it's going to be, but yeah. So definitely, and I loved the fact that because I think we talked about ontologies recently, and that was the kind of the meat of their conversation. And of course, Russ has always got good stuff. Hoping to hear more about Neymar, but what else we got? What else was in? It was one of the first times I'd actually got it done, mostly the week before. Well, yeah. So, there's lots tomorrow. You're not done with the week. I also really like this brain space initiative that meets on Fridays, and they get really, it's hosted by Trends, which is this joint Georgia brain imaging center. So it's like Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Emory, I think, and I think Vince Calhoun's the director, and they've got a really nice community on Slack where they're sharing papers and covering like multiple areas, and so like even during the week, the Fridays are kind of like the special speakers. But during the week, they're potentially covering a particular area like imaging genetics, or one of like the 6 or 8 topics that they track. And I think that's a really great one. and then of course there's going to be. I mean, this somewhat relates to Andreas's. Potentially relates to some of Andreas's work, or kind of use cases. People with disorders of consciousness. Well, not necessarily his cases, but there's a good FNIRS workshop or webinar tomorrow, as well as pharmaco EEG, which, like getting back to better ways to tackle psychiatry than Project Amber is actually look at treatment response, as opposed to trying to diagnose from ERPs or resting EEG. And there will be they've got a very interesting set of speakers for that meeting tomorrow. So other than that, did anybody have anything that they wanted to talk about? Any accomplishments for 2020 that you're proud of? I'm just happy happy to make it through.
This is reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, I think the many online hack nights that particularly, actually we should all take this opportunity to thank Morgan for all of his work this year, putting all this stuff together. I mean, oh my God, like what a guy.
Well, it's been a real,
I'm unmute for this clap.
Thank you.
Hey, clapping right now. Thank you, Morgan, for doing all that, and it's been a real boost to my kind of intellectual quality of life. A little bit of extra fun and extra kind of semi work thing in the week that's added a lot.
I've as you might guess, I enjoyed a lot. It is going to be weird actually taking a break because we were on a pretty good streak. Every week, but yeah, I think a break is good, and I am looking forward to finishing out a year of this. It'll be sometime in March. What are we going to do for Buzz and Review? Do you know?
So I got enrolled in a discussion. I enrolled myself in this discussion with East Coast people.
Okay.
And I don't know if I was like allocated to that group.
We were.
Yeah, I don't check my emails, my NeurotechX email so much, so maybe I kind of missed the comms on that. But I did do a call with Adam and Brian and people yesterday, and we have so the kind of the East cluster of New York, Toronto, and Hamilton, I think, and then Washington, DC as well. But DC we're gonna like partner together in some way. And one of the things that came up in that discussion that I think will also kind of propagate out is the way of the kind of the plans around the social event or the networking event to accompany the presentation. And like doing it on a gather town, but trying to kind of get that organized so that it's maybe like a nice map with say like booths for presenters. Like that would be really nice if it was possible to get companies to kind of do little presentations in little virtual booths. I don't know if there'll be any interest, but if there was, then that would be interesting. So I was kind of piping up about that. I was saying like, okay, let's pool our resources in terms of the presentation part so that we can have a bit more bandwidth in terms of making a good push on the networking event component, because that seems to me like the bit that would benefit the most from having a bit of thought put into it.
Yeah.
But that's what was going on in the East Coast discussions.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the presentation should just be, a presentation somebody puts some work into and, gets recorded so that people can watch it at leisure. And certainly as part of the Western group, I'd love to see that in at least in Spanish as well. And, but yeah, I mean, I think focus on the networking, like the Neurobar events that we're together with the Neurotech Gaming and BCI 101 were some really nice opportunities, that.
So how were those structured? Like, I didn't actually make it to any of those. What are they like?
Yeah, that was really nice. I mean, it was, it was a little like, it was like trying to use Zoom to create a gather town in the sense that like take a large group of people and split them into smaller, like workable, conversation numbers. And yeah, like, okay. And let them, but leave it very unstructured in terms of what people are talking about.
Do you think GatherTown would just be better for doing that full stop rather than doing that on Zoom?
I mean, GatherTown, certainly the beauty of GatherTown is like you get this interface where you can see where conversations are taking place. And if you do it right, that you can, add something to that landscape so that people know where to go, right?
I was thinking it would be great to have, well, as I was saying, like, I think if a critical mass or like a small number of people can just knock their heads together on this and some of them put the hours in. I haven't done like a big GatherTown map designing effort yet, so I don't know what's involved in it, but I've seen the ones that people have made, so I know what's possible. But you can, like you just said, like the thing is like, what would be a map design that would facilitate something that you'd want to come out of that event? And like three things that immediately come to mind, and I'm sure more could come, is, like I said, number one, if there are going to be either sponsors or exhibitors or anyone who's got like a thing to say that is like, kind of like a booth at a conference, then have, just little areas on the map that's their thing, and people can just go and talk to them and hear their spiel, right? And then another thing is having something, because we were talking about doing, well, like as I said, like pooling up the East Coast groups. So having something in the map that was like Toronto, New York, Washington, right? And just, I don't know, like an area where the kind of somewhat the theme of the area was something like, this is where the Toronto people can go to meet other Toronto people, right? For example. And this is where you can go and meet New York people. In principle, that you could have that. But then another thing is have actually like thematic discussion zones, right? Like this is where people are going to be chatting about, brain spellers with EEG. This is where people are going to be chatting about VR. This is where people are going to be chatting about, brain imaging, whatever. And think about incorporating that into the map.
Yeah. So I pointed to you as the GatherTown expert.
Really? What, I just said all that?
I said you used it for the code sprint,
Yeah.
And
well, I've just been a user so far. I haven't been a designer, but I guess I'm kind of I'm interested enough to look into this actually.
Certainly, the person I was thinking to talk to was Roberto, just because he's definitely like put some much more serious work into designing quote, I don't know what else to call it, landscapes or,
that's a great idea. Yeah.
Maps.
There's also the people who actually designed the HBM party map.
Yeah.
They're on, I can't remember her name, Savannah. She's on the Mattermost. I actually have asked her about this, so I could kind of get in touch with her again.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not clear to me how involved it is, like making a custom map. I don't think it's super trivial.
He would know and would probably be pretty helpful in terms of like help, making something happen for us. And certainly, I was hoping that he would, I'm looking for ways to to get him more involved without him necessarily having to take on an EEG project. But super curious in terms of what Paris is thinking about doing as well.
So another question on that is like whether we should just have everyone in the world, or like many people around the world, like just pitch in on this thing, like the design of this place, and make it like available to everyone all the time, but make it like the single global place that's being populated at certain times. Like matching to events that are going on at any given time. Throughout those few weeks.
In many ways, this is what Brainweb was trying to be, and I mean, it was like it wasn't just like custom Jitsi rooms, but GatherTown, the last kind of like community call that was like, I want to say it was like July 15th, maybe. But it was like I missed whatever they did in October. But like midsummer, it was like talking for a bit, and then like here's the GatherTown that we built.
Right.
And
I'm trying to remember if Discord is working on a feature like that. I know they've talked about it because they're trying to do more professional like event things where you can quickly add and delete chat rooms, since like you can have an unlimited number of chat rooms in a Discord, but making those easy to coordinate or view like multiple different chat rooms at the same time and select is something I know Discord doesn't have yet. Like,
one thing that is an option, and that's what they had with the HBM party thing, is they actually had it kind of built into the map so that in certain spaces you had a little message come up that said press X to join the Zoom call, and it would like link out to another call, so you could kind of like link things in a slightly hacky way, but it works just fine.
I mean, I forget if I think live Discord can be integrated into a website where like you could actually I don't think they've added that yet. But yeah, like if you could have a live feed of different Jitsi calls or something that you can hop in or out of, that would be really cool. Especially if it has text, speech to text. Like if someone doesn't want to join the actual call, they could like be reading all of the different calls at once.
It's an interesting idea.
I mean,
it is possible.
Yeah, I do think everybody should get to see, what people did for HBM in terms of, like not saying for, this Buzz in Review, but for poster sessions and GatherTown, it was a great use of essentially mashup of existing technology.
Well, there's also the Brain Hack party tomorrow.
Yeah. I hate the meetup limit. I mean, as well as like, I didn't see that until, I don't know, just a couple days ago. But let me just make sure we dropped a link. And well, I feel like so Eric, who's joined us from Sweden before, made another plea on Discord that we move off of Slack. And let me just see his very reasonable yeah. And yeah, could we set up a once in a month automated message in Slack inviting people over to Discord?
We could probably.
You should just commission a vote, right, or a petition, and just send it around and just see. Do it on Slack, even better. Put it on Slack. Do a poll saying, do you want to move to Discord? And if like most of the people on Slack say that, then say yes. Then that's a no-brainer.
Well, so certainly what we should petition is that like our onboarding is our sign up is a Google form, right? That then gives us a Slack invite.
We should add the Discord invite to that.
Right.
As well. Yeah.
Like there shouldn't, if anybody new joining, it shouldn't be a question, right? I mean, that would seem super reasonable. And
well, but it's no. I mean, that doesn't exactly solve the problem because they want to access the conversations, right? But yeah, they should be sent to both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
another thing is like, could we have a bot in Discord that just copies Slack messages over for a couple of months? Because then the Slack memory only lasts as like a couple of months, right? And then
depends how active people are. Like, yeah, I don't remember which bots do that, but I'm pretty sure there is a bot that does that. Because I know at Noisebridge we've been thinking about installing one of those bots. Because right now we have our forum auto post to Slack, and we want everything to also auto post to Discord at some point. But
that would help with one half of the problem, right? Which is not missing stuff. But then the other half of the problem would be the kind of bidirectionality, which maybe the answer to that would be to have a second bot that says every time someone posts a message in Slack, say, hello, please go to Discord and repost this message and use Discord in the future.
Yeah. I can go back through and make sure all the Discord channels are set up. I think I created most of them, but there are, I think, like 40 or 50 I might not have created because they didn't have anything posted in Slack because everything keeps getting erased. So some of the channels on Slack have no info in them.
Probably most of them, right? I would have thought.
Yeah. Which is very sad. I've been good about posting in both, so I haven't lost any conversations recently, but
Do we know for sure that Slack aren't going to come out and just say, actually, we're going to give you everything for free?
Again, this is my Salesforce wish is that Salesforce somehow takes pity on us, nonprofits or something. At the same time, I don't know where that is coming from in terms of previous behavior.
Or the other way around, do we know that Discord aren't going to start charging?
Yeah, that's where Discord has a pretty stable monetary model right now. For because most of their stuff's around gaming, and because people are now using it for game streaming and stuff, and people want professional variants of it. So there are professional things like being a Discord associate or whatever, but it's mainly focused in gaming so much that I think secondary use cases should be fine. I think a lot longer than Slack, because I have no idea what Salesforce is going to do with Slack.
I know that they were using Rocket Chat for Neural PS.
Oh yeah. IRC and Rocket Chat are other options. Though I don't know how easy it is to separate conversations and not just have a infinitely long single thread of people referencing other people up the chain, which I have seen done before.
We had there was an argument, but it was kind of a difference of opinion on the Brain Hack Ontario organizing committee around the kind of, well, we used the Mattermost, and we had Discord, and we had the GitHub repos and some Google Docs, and they're like multiple and people were like, why are there so many? And some people were saying, why is there Mattermost? And then other people were saying, why is there Discord? Because Mattermost we had first for this application anyway.
Yeah.
And then there are other people who were most people were just saying, why is there two? That's annoying. Because I'm only seeing half of the discussions. And that was how it went. There was just half the people were just communicating on one platform and half people communicating on another. It was like somewhat arbitrary what information you saw at any point.
Yeah.
Don't want that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, that's like the bane of modern communication. It's social media is so diversified and everything's good at one thing and bad at another. And it's really annoying. So Slack is pretty good in a lot of aspects. Discord has a lot of good things, but both are you are relying on a third party to not be corrupted. If you want to run your own server and do a forum-based system, there's all the upkeep that involves. You don't have video conferencing like you do on Discord, though I do think it is possible that Jitsi is going to be able to be integrated on a lot of websites pretty soon, which would be really cool. If we had a forum, we could probably integrate Jitsi into it, which would be nice.
Well, I certainly it wouldn't be a meeting if we didn't slam on Slack at least once. And yeah, I think I read something. There was something funny on Noisebridge's website about Slack.
Oh yeah.
It's like, we have Slack, but of course it's not cool or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's like, please use our Discuss, or if you want memes and video conferencing, use Discord. Like, right now, our Discord is not at all replacing our Slack, but a lot of people hang out in there for fun.
So wait, I mean, mainly, I think just to see the look of horror on John's face. So, so what is Sparkle Spaces? Is this an alternate Gather Town?
I don't know. I clicked on the link and it wasn't obvious that it was replacing that. It was like a kind of static menu. That's the first thing you see if you go on the link. But we'll find out tomorrow. I hadn't heard of it before.
You know what I think this is? I think that somehow this is open source, and that GatherTown's not. I wonder. I'll.
Yeah. Also, I've been looking at the EMG keyboard that the student clubs that McGill did. That is really cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, obviously, I think we have to get the student clubs to come and talk about their projects. And, I really want to hear them, talk about this work. And if there's not already like a Kaggle, part of this competition, like there's, I love the fact that UCSD, the Neurotech at UCSD club got together with the Data Science Society club and did this joint, like, I think quarter project where, they did like 9 or 10 weeks for this, introducing people to, the kind of classification issues with ERPs and all to the point of basically submitting solutions for. I think they chose one of the typical BCI data sets, the numbered data sets like 4B or something like that, if you know what I'm talking about. So one of the motor imagery data sets. I haven't actually checked, but hopefully, I think her name is Geeling is going to join us and talk about that, as well as we'll get Mint and McGill's group to come talk, and PolyMTL if they want to too. All right, so dropped a link for the brain hack, and let me just quickly. What was some of the new stuff on Slack?
I definitely think we should get together and talk about what NeurotechX groups should apply for getting one of the cognition headsets. I mean, I think all of them should apply. And I think people in this group are probably biased towards a couple specific groups.
Was Josh Phipps on, or is Josh Phipps still on? I mean, I really thought like we have a pretty active group that would.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey, Josh. Yeah.
I think it was fascinating. It was pretty interesting, man.
Yeah. What do you? I mean, do you see use cases for it in terms of your own work?
Yeah, I was sort of noodling through some of them. I mean, definitely for, our TBI patients that have, all kinds of problems. But I mean, even aphasic patients and stuff like that, they can, I mean, I could see a myriad of different use cases, honestly. I mean, it's like, it seemed like a sort of almost like a Swiss Army knife of platforms too. So you can kind of like do almost anything, it seems like, anyway. My only, and I meant to ask a question I totally forgot, which was how long does the battery last? But because they're using but they're using a phone, so at least if you can do that, what they call, what was it, half baked or whatever it was, where you split the processing. So hopefully it will last a reasonable amount of time, because that's the biggest problem we have with these things. It's like, oh, that's cool, it worked for an hour, and you're like, great, go charge it. Thanks a lot. And then don't forget to take it off the charger, right? And these people remember things, so you're like, oh, great, thanks. Anyway, it was cool.
I mean, Yeah. No, I mean, it's a great question.
Does it have pass-through power as well as data? Like, can you charge it while sending data to a computer?
Yeah. So we're talking about the Thunderbolt cable, right? Yeah. If you could have like an external power pack, if you run it that way, that'd be pretty sweet. Something on your belt or something.
Because it looks like it uses the plug. It plugs into the phone as well, so for power transfer, and I'm hoping they get an Android version of it, the Unity side app, because I know very few actual like low-level developers that do anything with Apple at this point.
Gee, I wonder why. But anyway, I also like that they put the haptics in multiple positions and the speakers in multiple positions. So like for patients that have like spatial orientation issues, like you could use some of that sort of stuff. I mean, it was just, I could just think of like, I could just sit there for 6 months and just tinker with the damn thing. If it really all does what all they say it does, it's just like, holy hell.
Well,
they say, but they don't show.
Yeah, it's like there's always that like, that's neat. Sure. And then when it actually comes out, you're like, well, that's not what you said it did. But anyway, no, I mean, they're ambitious, which is great. But I mean, I think when you're trying to actually take some of that stuff to market, it might look great on a bench, but then when you actually try and put it to market at scale, it's like it's not going to work. Or, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, who knows? The throughput rates were insane. I was like, how the hell are they doing that?
I forgot to ask about the Bluetooth 5, because something tells me they were doing that in an environment that doesn't have 2.4 gigahertz.
Right. They do it in a Faraday cage or something, or what?
Because, like, I'm thinking about, like, okay, if I went to a convention, like, wearing this, would I be able to do anything with it?
Right. Yeah. Well, if you set off an EMP before you actually decide to turn yours on, and then put yours in the sheath first and blow it up. But, I don't know. There's all that. That's just real world, but I mean, even if it's a fraction, that it's still phenomenal.
So
it's. I want to volunteer Ryan to lead this effort and marshal our forces, marshal our arguments, and I think it'd be great. It certainly is a. A perfect device incorporating AR BCI.
It's pretty slick indeed.
There's another thing that you can think about as part of this that it kind of occurred to me with the kernel applications was that I think there's something to be said for doing some planning, some kind of group planning. Probably would make sense for it to be relatively geographically kind of clustered for kind of shipping reasons, but to kind of basically say, hey, we've got 5 groups or 10 kind of groups of people who are interested in doing some stuff that ultimately we're pretty confident would like add value to your device. Give us one of your devices, company, and we'll kind of organize a roster of projects that involve passing it on every few weeks or every few months, and it kind of does the rounds. And that we should kind of figure out like what would be the process for that. Like, can we
like?
Would it make sense to actually have like a process in place, or like some kind of structure of that type of thing, and then take that proposition to the next company that has something interesting that they want to do, develop in that way, and say like we have a method for like generating content, and it's streamlined and organized, and we've demonstrated in X, Y, and Z that it produces like large numbers of lines of useful code and data and interest in users and visibility and all these things.
Feedback on the device, definitely.
And like structure the process of particularly kind of pooling multiple groups, right? I think that would be like the key benefit, the key kind of tapping of the network, is that there's like lots of people who kind of connect to each other. But like I said, geographically, you don't want to be sending something across continents multiple times, but maybe it's like a bit easier to kind of get it, circulate it within a state, right? Or within that type of thing. And then have some kind of process that organizes like let's say a project submission model,
like an ideation process,
timeshare model, and a kind of some commitment to outcomes, right? So that we can not just so the end result is not just actually getting the thing circulating, but also having something to show for it afterwards that can be kind of taken to the next people at the next point and say, and these are your outcomes, like this is our
that's
portfolio.
Interesting.
I've build on it.
I've been thinking about that type of thing for a while. Like, I think probably like a California one, like one that goes between like Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver, then like a New York, Boston, and northeastern Canada one, and then like one in like Paris and like Europe, because like Europe has a pretty good transportation network for getting stuff between like Spain, Britain, Italy.
I mean, France. I think you're going to be relying on the fact that there's going to be people actually moving between cities, right?
Yeah,
if you're talking about a device that's less like a couple $100, then you don't. Yeah, like you what the kind of passing on mechanism would be, oh well, there's going to be someone going between Paris and London at some point in this 3-month period, so just figure out who's going to be doing that